Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to The Collision. It's Daniel Blackaby here with Sarah. The third episode of The Mandalorian, The Sin, just dropped on Disney Plus, and we're ready to talk about it. So let's go. So, what did you think of this episode? Things picked up action-wise. What was your takeaway from this episode?
I feel like we somewhat knew what was going to happen in the episode before it happened. I kind of guessed most of the things were going to happen that did happen before the episode even aired. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a good episode.
Yeah, it wasn't maybe as surprising. I think, as we kind of brainstorming what was going to happen, I think a lot of us, and probably a lot of you, figured he'd probably give Baby Yoda to the buyer. And then we figured, either in this episode or our next episode, he'd have remorse, and he wasn't going to let the Yoda die or anything. So it unfolded, story-wise, maybe similar to what we expected. But the way kind of the journey of watching it unfold, I was talking to someone, if you were just to go back in time to an 8-year-old me and surrounded by Star Wars action figures and look into my mind, you'd probably see the end of this episode. This is pure kind of Star Wars bliss. So we'll kind of get into that in a second. But so the episode, what about just the tone? It kind of, last episode we were a little confused with Manda talking about, it seemed a little more kind of fun and kid-like and childish. This one seems like it returns a bit more to that kind of gritty that the pilot episode was.
Yeah, it was a lot more of that Western feel of the first one that was more tense, and you weren't really sure what was going to go down. Even when he went to return the Baby Yoda, the tension between him and I don't really know what his name is though.
Yeah, kind of the big boss, kind of Imperial guy.
You could tell they were what's gonna happen, and they were all kind of
and he
ready for something to happen.
Because he kind of calls out the Mandalorian for, he asks, what are you gonna do with it? And the buyers, saying, someone with your reputation, you walk away, you don't ask. The deal's done. So you definitely feel kind of the slow building tension. The first, where last episode, it seemed like there was this action all throughout the episode. This one is sort of a slow build to that end, kind of, when things go down at the end. Sort of that decision when he's in what Sarah called with the Baby Yoda, with the knob coming off.
He's gonna grab the knob and look at the stick and realize the knob's gone, and he's gonna turn around and go get Baby Yoda.
Yeah, he's gonna realize this how cute that Baby Yoda was. In that moment when he kind of shuts off the ship, and you just know he's gonna go wreck shop with these stormtroopers and get this thing back. It's hard as a Star Wars fan. I don't know if you were feeling it as much as I was, but it's hard not to just sort of, woo, go get it.
I think we did cheer, out loud when it happened. So.
You just know things are gonna go down. So he has that moment, kind of that, of reflecting. And I don't know if it's surprising to you. I think going into the show, we kind of knew, he's not going to be a bad guy. You're not gonna, you can't lead a Star Wars movie or show with a villain. That's sort of against sort of the heart of Star Wars. So ultimately, he's gonna do the Han Solo. He's gonna make the kind of the change of heart. Are you surprised that how quickly because we're only about an hour and a half of watching time into this show, and it seems like he's already kind of going back on, he's maybe not quite as grizzled and tough as he.
I feel like they had to, just to make the story work. He had to go back at this point because they didn't know what was going to happen to the Yoda or what they were going to do with the Yoda. For the storyline to continue, he had to go back to get him. But it did, you could see the conflict in him when he was sitting in the ship, do I go back? And there was actually a moment that I was like, maybe he actually won't. Maybe he'll gonna fly away, and then, it'll take a little bit longer. But, yeah, I don't know. I feel like it works.
And maybe he's not quite as far, because he obviously cares about the Yoda baby, but he's still, his Paul Creed, his boss guy, he still straight up shoots him, when he ends up living, kind of gets lucky, but he's still gunning down his friends at the end. So I don't know if he's made the turn and now he's a hero.
But
I
he
think
still got a bounty. Like, he went and picked up a bounty.
yeah, I think it's more just this personal connection to this specific kind of creature rather than he's a good guy now and he's just going to start acting, morally right. Like, and he's, even the way I don't know if it reminded you when he's going through to rescue the baby Yoda, to me it felt like a Star Wars Jason Bourne where he's, this one guy against a bunch. He's kind of hiding. He's kind of using his brains a little more.
Yeah, he doesn't just shoot everyone. At one point, I was like, why doesn't he just shoot the guy? But then he still shoots, which is hilarious. But like, he kind of does a bunch of different ways of like maneuvering through the.
Yeah, which is, I'm glad they did. I'm glad they showed that because in some ways so far he's almost been shown to be. He's a warrior, but he's also kind of a doofus. Like in the first 2 episodes, he gets jumped by creatures and beat up and. He makes some bad decisions, so it was good for them to kind of show that he's a warrior and he can gun down, take on armies of these guys, but he's a smart guy. He's intelligent. He's kind of used more of his brains, so he saves the Yoda. And I think we still don't know what's special about the Yoda. They mention harvesting or taking from it what they need.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's a way, if they're going to get into like the Metachlorians, or there's a way to like harvest the force power, something to do that. So it kind of reveals a little more about what's special about this Yoda. But he gets the Yoda, gets out, and then that moment, which you actually picked up what was going on before I did, where it goes back to the cantina and all their things start beeping. And it realized, they put the call out that all these
get him back.
Yeah, all the other bounty hunters and kind of scum, it's a free for all to get it back. They end up kind of in a very kind of like the first episode, very Western feeling. Mm-hmm. He's walking down Main Street. It's dusty and dirty, and there's you got the outlaws kind of slowly walking up behind him, circling him. It's going to be an epic shootout. One against.
You just needed the cowboy boots with that jingle.
Yeah.
On them as he walked.
Yeah, a tumbleweed blew by. They dove right into that aspect of it. But so he's taking them on, and that moment where you see that he's kind of being defeated, he's outnumbered, and you see that missile fly across. Mm-hmm. And actually earlier, I don't if you remember me saying it when he's back with his Mandalorian gang. And kind of you learn more about them in this episode, and they actually talk, which is kind of see the dynamics, which I thought was fascinating. Kind of where the Mandalorian fits in, where he's a Mandalorian, but he's still kind of an outsider with the rest of the gang. So I found that fascinating. So when they were in that, in the Mandalorian kind of hangout, I made a comment like, oh man, I hope we get to see just an army of these Mandalorians. Kind of in their full glory. In the cartoon, like the Clone Wars or Rebels, you see it in animated, with all their jetpacks and they're fighting. And I figured, at some point they gotta show that. They gotta give us that, as Star Wars.
They made that comment. I didn't realize that they were only letting one go above ground or out of their area at a time. So that's why when the Empire guy was talking, it's really hard to find Mandalorians to even give it. I didn't realize that they were somewhat in hiding.
Yeah, and they kind of go into the mythology of it all too. The planet Mandalore, which they're from, was taken over by the Empire. They tried to kind of rebel against it, got put down. So it did, in kind of in a larger world building, you learned a lot more about, and then also just the helmets never coming off. Some of the mythology of who the Mandalorians are. Was interesting, and even how quickly, so you have all them show up in jetpacks, which is just pure, for Star Wars nerds. The Mandalorians, they're using all their gear. I'm kind of surprised how quickly, it's a welcome surprise how quickly they went there with the whole gang.
Well, it meant a lot to them because it meant they were not in hiding, and because they were hiding how many numbers they had, and for them to go out was hey, there's actually quite a few of us.
Because I'm curious, because going into the show, I kind of figured this is a sort of a lone wolf cowboy. There's no other Mandalorians. He's just going to be on his own. He has to learn to trust people and work with people. Kind of somewhat cliche. And I was kind of surprised in the first couple episodes that no, he's part of a kind kind of a family, a group, or a clan at least. He's not just out there on his own. Like, he is sort of a solo working guy, but just sort of how, only 3 episodes in, and they already have kind of the other Mandalorians come out. I'm curious how much going forward will kind of include the larger gang. There's still kind of sidekicks and characters that haven't been introduced yet, so I'm wondering if we're going to be away from this planet for maybe the rest of the season, or at least for a while, and kind of move on to new things. We might not see the Mandalorians, like the whole clan again for a while.
What did you think of the, like, I found it a little cheesy, the, like, Mandalorian that came up next to his ship and was just like, whoosh.
Giving like the soldier salute.
It just seemed like Captain America.
Yeah, sort of, like the Rocketeer flying by his ship or whatever. But even just, as the scene maybe was a little like, this seems a little Disney Plus. I think that's what it represented, though, because you get more of his backstory too. And I don't know how much as more of like a casual Star Wars nerd, this flashback, you kind of see it is the clones, or not the clones, it's the droids. So it's, Clone Wars time, the droids are taking out his family. Obviously it ends with him about to get killed. He's obviously not killed. So I'm sure it will show the Mandalorians rescue him. We kind of get this a lot more about where he fits in with, as sort of someone that's being left for dead, taken over. You can kind of see why maybe he feels it for Yoda. Abandoned. He was abandoned. Someone came to rescue him. Kind of the importance of him finding his family with the Mandalorians, and then kind of Yoda.
I feel like one of the most like epic parts was when he walked into the cantina in his new armor. That was like,
and everyone's just like, "Oh man,
he just got paid."
Yeah, someone got a paycheck to. He looks pretty awesome, and again, you can kind of see one of the things I mentioned in an earlier recap was, as he's kind of finding himself and where he fits with, as the persona of the Mandalorian. That on an outward sense, he's kind of becoming more and more Mandalorian, getting the armor. And, this episode, he's looking like a full-on warrior, and they kind of hint at the end that he's gonna, he's gonna add a jetpack by the end of the.
He's like, I need one of those.
Yeah, he's like, I need one of those. You just know he's gonna have a jetpack and kind of have the full Mandalorian, but man, he's looking pretty awesome.
I also thought it was pretty cool that he was like really honest about his encounter with the rhino beast,
the mudhorn.
The mudhorn, sorry, and that like he didn't do it by himself. I feel like most guys would be like, yeah, I took on a mudhorn.
Well, I think that's kind of what makes him an interesting character is that I think we kind of figured he's going to be like a Han Solo. He's just scum. He's just going to lie and getting his way through, but he's not. As a Mandalorian, he comes from a very kind of honor culture, warrior culture. Even last episode when he knew he was defeated by the Mudhorn, he kind of almost like a samurai was just ready to go down like a soldier, held his knife up, and he's just going to take it. So it makes him this sort of his own kind of moral compass that he's not just sort of a bounty hunter scum like I think some people thought going into the series.
His morals and values.
Yeah, he kind of has that kind of the foundation is kind of the Mandalorian culture, which kind of grounds him. So I thought that was interesting too.
What's the Cigna? I don't really get the Cigna part of like because they're saying he did something.
I'm curious. Again, maybe if you guys have any guesses for that, this is sort of his sign.
They put it on the armor.
Yeah, and it's kind of because he doesn't come from a clan necessarily. I think because he's adopted. And it keeps showing kind of that one symbol. That kind of the golden. I'm not exactly sure what that symbol. What the actual creature is, but whenever they go into the armory, it's up at the top. That's if you remember, like Boba Fett had that on his armor. You've seen that a bunch. In the Force Awakens, it was on the flag at Maz Kanata's castle. So that's going to be a big part eventually. Sort of what does he put on his? Like is he going to put like a Yoda on it? Like is he?
I like that.
They've talked about the Mythosaurus, the kind of that creature. Which I believe is what Boba Fett rides in the holiday special. If you want to go there, kind of this big dragon kind of creature that the ancestors used to ride that they mentioned. Like maybe that will be it. But I think it kind of plays into sort of his identity and the fact that even though he's a Mandalorian, he doesn't really have his full identity. He doesn't have his own sign yet. Yeah. He's still kind of an outsider with the armor. I think it'd be interesting when that happens, when he kind of what decides, what he'll get. I don't know. I think overall, I'm I'm loving this show. This is to me is some of the best Star Wars we've got since Return of the Jedi. Some of the I think this is in a fun adventure way. I like the last episode more.
Mm-hmm.
It was more goofy and just sort of fun, not quite as consequential, but
I think it was interesting. Like the episode's title was "The Sin," and that so you see that like right at the beginning, and you're like, what's gonna happen? But I just think it's weird that it's called The Sin, considering.
Well, and I thought this one's called The Sin. Last one is called The Child. I was like, this is like they're setting up to like tell the Christmas gospel story, but it is it is this, and I think obviously it refers to the sin of abandoning the innocent and the hope. So it's painting some of the moral. There is that black and white, even though this show kind of for now is resting more in like the gray area of the underworld. So it still kind of has that classic Star Wars, like there's good and there's bad, and you can't really get away from that. Which I think is interesting, because that's sort of one of the questions throughout this whole series that we've been curious about is how are they going to do that? What Star Wars has always been black and white. How are they going to kind of deal with the gray anti-hero? And I'm glad to see so far that it's done that, but also kept the core of sort of what makes Star Wars Star Wars. So what do you think, maybe to end off on, anything you think next episode, they don't do any like, next week on The Mandalorian. So we kind of go in blind, which is fun, but it's...
There's a girl in the trailer we still haven't seen, and some worlds we haven't seen yet, so I'm sure he's going to go we're like, where is it going to go now? Like,
I know, the trailer features that kind of that forest planet, and a lot of stuff goes down there. So I think that's where we're going to go next episode.
There's no, like, information to even let you guess, like, and because you don't really know his backstory for him to know what would call him to go, where he would go. Yeah, so and I think some of what makes this so fun is, because it is disconnected from the larger Star Wars mythology, is they can go anywhere with it. Like, they can go, you kind of go in having no idea what's going to happen next, which just makes each week, it's like waking up on Christmas on Friday, we got a new episode. But hey, if you've been following the show, let us know what you thought of this episode. If are you still enjoying it? Was this your favorite episode? Did you feel like the last couple episodes were better? Did your mind blow up when the Mandalorians show up with the jetpacks? So let us know your thoughts. And if you haven't done so already, we'd love for you to subscribe to our channel. Keep up with all our video content. Make sure you like this video. Jump into the comment section and let us know your thoughts. And we want to thank you for watching. Hope you'll continue to collide with your world for Christ.